So were you ever able to sort of communicate that to your parents, or did you just never
It's
like
interesting.
how did it
So
resolve itself or not
it's
resolve, but
it's
how
it's
did it
multi
end?
it's multifold, which is, again, we talk about this long arc of the life, and you go, oh, it's crazy that your story ended up that way. Well, I married my wife in my backyard of my parents' house. Now you have to understand that he, up until I think 3 or 4 years ago, they still owned that house, still lived in that house. And so every time that I go home to my house, I turn a corner and drive past that driveway, and I look up and I see that hill, and I see that house, and I see that path, and I see that creek, and I see that fence. My entire adult life, I've had that feeling. And so about 16 years ago, before I marry my wife, I'm in therapy. I'm doing a lot of work because I'm finally in the relationship that I want to be in, and that's going well, and I'm really in a good place. And I say to myself, if I ever see him, my parents, I'm going to confront him, and I'm go for a fucking walk with my wife, and I turn the corner, and he's in the horse corral, and my wife is standing next to me.
Did she know
And oh yeah,
that
yeah,
that's the
totally,
guy?
to 100%,
Oh
a
wow.
hundred percent. And I yell at him. I say, "Hey!" And he looks at me, and I go, "You remember what the fuck you did to me?" And he goes, "Yes." He goes, "Uh huh." And I'm like, "Well, it wasn't fucking right, and I hope to fucking God you never laid your hands on another person." And I said a bunch of stuff to him, and he just stood there and listened, and then he walked away, and I think I just crumbled
Yeah, that's
because
what
it was like
like
this. And what was amazing was my wife was standing next to me. She knows all my trauma and all my pain. And it's like, a lot of times we're in relationships with people and we like don't get it validated. We don't get it like, this is real, what I'm talking about,
oh
what I'm
wow.
dealing with, my way, you know?
There's no denying it, that
And
situation.
she just saw it. She saw him say, yeah. And I'm not in my head. So, I still feel, like I should have fucking gone over there and hit him over the head with the shovel and handcuffed him and, you know,
Hmm.
whatever. But like, I eventually was able to confront him, which was part of my own path to getting there. And then another 10 years later, I'm finally like realized, because of some stuff my parents had mentioned to me, that they just didn't know the gravity of like the abuse, that what he did to me. So I sat both of my parents down, and I would sort of I recounted that, that ritual to them,
Hmm.
of what he did.
So what was the extent of what they knew when you were eventually like
They
when you were
knew
able to
that, like,
communicate?
in their brain, they're probably like, oh, Jacob was going up there, and he's probably there like whatever the safe version of like being molested or being fondled is,
Oh wow.
and like, so, oh, maybe he was just touching there, whatever. And it's like, I
Or
don't,
like
I don't,
playing doctor, exploring,
yeah,
like yeah.
exactly. So whatever made them feel like it was just that is probably what was in their head. And it became clear to me that 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 they didn't really have the full snapshot. And that was even after I confronted him and after all my therapy. So I would say that next breakthrough with my parents was really, that moment where, that happened. And I was able to articulate that to them. And then I would say, like, my relationship with my parents was like very, I want to say, repaired, like in a way that it was tough. But I think, you have these blank areas with people that don't get filled in, and you kind of owe it to yourself, for the people that you care about, to try to fill those spaces in, so that, you know a relationship could thrive, or it could grow where it couldn't before. So I
Well,
I And it was really triggered by the fact that my son was 5 and my daughter was 7. And I looked at them and I was like, this is the age that was happening to me. And I'm like I'd be in jail, I'd be in prison, you know? And then you feel all the complicated things about like, how do you deal with that with your kids, and how do you have those conversations, and you want to preserve the sanctity of some of those things if so far they've been okay. But at some point they have to, at some point I hope they watch or listen to our discussion and they become curious about like, how a life develops in those things. But the key thing with the trauma that's important to point out as it relates to Mike Ternasky is that the fall of 1991, when I am 18 and I am in high school, there's a psychology class that I'm in, and a guest speaker comes in and talks about being a man, being a boy at the time, and being molested by another man. And he talks about it in class. And I am in that class, and I go completely ashen. I feel like I'm going to vomit, and I remember everything, every fucking detail, every smell, all of it. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I wrote a letter to my neighbor. I found that letter recently. The fall of 1991 is when Mike Ternasky says, hey, Jake, I saw the Dogtown video. I saw the Think video. I know you're filming Carol. You need to come and help us finish this video. We need a third person for me and Sloshbach. So Ternasky pulls me out of that, because that dude's my neighbor right then when I realized that. But I'm this insecure 18-year-old skater. What do I do? Well, Mike T comes and saves my life. And then he fucking dies, and then I got to look at his dead body. So that's the that's the whole like, and I've only realized recently that the exact timing and the perfection of how he saved me. Because he really did, and by the way, Mike saved a lot of people. A lot. And that's the legacy to me that like should go tandem with how he redefined skateboard videos, is how many people he cared about and saved.